is about some more changes when it comes to the vaccine rollout that have taken place right now. Now, you and I both know what the reality of the vaccine rollout is, and please don't start with the usual bullshit on the Facebook page. There he is, Paul pro the vaccine. Calm down. The reason Australia has not been able to roll out the vaccine as effectively as we had hoped is because the Europeans stopped 3.5 million doses being able to come to the country. That's just fact. Yes, there's some state and federal stuff, but that's just fact. And despite the fact that there was a little bit of a worry about AstraZeneca with people under the age of 50 for an infinitesimal number of people, they're moving over to the Pfizer vaccine, and they're going to have 20 million jabs of it coming. Here's the health minister talking about it.
The additional vaccine purchases were announced by the Prime Minister on Friday, an additional 20 million Pfizer, taking our total number of vaccines that are available for Australians to over 170 million, or more than 3 times that required for 2 doses for the entire population.
And then there is some debate about whether every single person of the 25 million that live in this country will get the vaccine by the end of the year or not. But the point is this. Back to the Prince Philip thing. If you want to compare Australia with the rest of the world, and they want to compare that on vaccine rollout, in Australia right now, there were football stadiums full of people in every single state in the country. You were able to pretty effectively move around with very little restriction whatsoever. The Queen will attend a funeral for her husband where it is limited to just 30 people in London. So would it be nice if we could get it all done in a weekend? Sure. But when the only way that COVID comes into the country is when hotel quarantine springs a leak because someone somewhere didn't do the most obvious things, we can afford to wait. And remember, it's always your choice. And by the way, what is the expectation of those who demand that we should all have been vaccinated by now? These are all simultaneously the people who say, we've got to do our bit to help poorer nations around the world. So is their solution that we don't send tens of thousands of jabs to places like Papua New Guinea, so you might be able to have a vaccine in the inner west of Sydney or the inner city bit of Melbourne? Is that the logic? Because if there's only a limited amount of supply, it can only go in certain places, either your arm or into the arm of the population who desperately need it more. And as for the actual vaccine rollout to this point, and again, you're not going to see this anywhere else because it doesn't fit the overall narrative. Guess what? More than 1 million people in Australia have got it. Is it as many as they promised? No. But it's still a lot of people. Especially, and most importantly, these are the numbers that came out today about the number of people in aged care who have got it. 142,000 people in federal government-run aged care right now have had the doses. 39,000 in New South Wales, 34,000 in Queensland. Why is Victoria behind the pale? But still, 28,000 and all the rest of it. Make no mistake, the vaccine rollout, like everything these days, is overtly political. And if it doesn't go exactly perfectly, because remember, we've never done this before, but still, if it doesn't go exactly perfectly, trolls like Laura Tingle over there at the ABC, while taking a fistful of dollars, no, not for hosting events on the behalf of the Turnbull government, no, instead, this time at the Financial Review, they get to say Morrison's pandemic credentials turned to dust. What? The credentials that meant that when millions of people could have lost their job, they had JobKeeper and they didn't lose their job? Or that the hundreds of thousands of cases that are in our region didn't get across our border? Those are the credentials that are apparently gone to dust? It's all a game. It's a narrative. We didn't have as many deaths as they said. Remember 50,000, 150,000? Oh, it moved to something else. What the economy didn't... More people have a job now than before the pandemic. What's next? What's it? Vaccines. It's just a rolling target. And again, as I've told you for how long now, about how the state governments, particularly the Team Red state governments, are going to go out of their way all day, every day to say everything that's wrong is federal government's fault, even though we know about borders, we know about the economies that have been trashed as a result. We know that despite the fact that thank you so much for saving our lives, they didn't have the contact tracing. You've heard it all before. Well, guess what the media narrative is, apparently, about the failure of the vaccine rollout? Apparently now it's good for the Labor Party, particularly in Queensland, as written by the Brisbane Times. Beware the narrative. These people are playing games. They are cheering for their side. And then if you can't say that the vaccine thing is an entire shambles, despite the fact that COVID basically doesn't exist in Australia, and therefore, yes, it'd be nice to get it, but the people who most need it, those that are elderly and are in nursing homes, are currently getting it, and more than 1 million people have already got it. This was a vaccine that didn't exist until the end of last year.